The geopolitics of saving the planet by ending the use of fossil fuels as a source of energy are complex. And they're complex for several reasons. For one, they involve directly the interests and livelihoods of nation states. They also involve the interests of big business. For that matter, they involve differences in the way that the global south and the global north see the problem. But more importantly, they are complex because to end fossil fuels will not be cheap. And so the question of one, who pays for this transition is a major one. The second one is the pace at which we migrate from a fossil fuel dependent energy mix. The importance of the pace for certain countries is particularly important because it means if we speed up the end to the use of fossil fuels as a primary source of energy, in that process, we also deprive countries that are rich in oil and gas resources of the ability to use those resources to better the lot of their people. This is a big deal. And so as we ponder the move to clean energy sources, a big question is, who pays for, one, the direct cost of the necessary infrastructure, the laws, the changing of systems in order to migrate from fossil fuels? But even more importantly, how do we mitigate the opportunity cost of countries that have oil and gas if, in effect, we demand a quicker pace towards our transition away from fossil fuels? An important aspect of the fossil fuel debate, therefore, is this notion of assets that will become redundant or stranded because though they have not reached their end of life, when a decision is taken to walk away from oil and gas, those assets, economically and financially, will immediately become, for all intents and purposes, worthless. And this, for certain countries, would be literally cutting one's nose to spite one's face. And so the question of how to balance the need to save the planet, but also protect the rights of certain sovereigns, is a major debate, as we saw at COP28. That said, scientists argue that we hear all that, and it makes perfect sense from a just transition perspective. But there will be no planet Earth as we know it to speak of. And so something has to give. And even though the world doesn't say it in these terms, fundamentally, what the world is asking those who are petroleum-rich in resources is basically to sacrifice so that the entire planet can indeed be saved. There is also another difference in the way we approach. Because of the different levels in economic development and industrialization, when we think of what needs to be done, the industrialized North really is looking at adapting its current lifestyle, its infrastructure, its sources of energy, its patterns of consumption, so that they're aligned with environmental best practice. So if you look at it another way, the global North doesn't really sacrifice anything. It just changes the way it lives and it sources energy, but it continues to enjoy the socio-economic status that it has acquired through industrialization using fossil fuels. By contrast, the global South has to mitigate the risk on themselves of climate change, all the while struggling with energy access and energy security. So while at a planetary level, the North and the South are one in terms of socio-economic needs, in terms of development and industrial needs. These regions are in a fundamentally different space. And this is one of the single most important challenges geopolitically of how to move forward in a way that does not further victimize the South, but also in a way that enables the loss incurred in the South, the damage suffered by the South, to be addressed. Hence the notion of loss and damage. Except, having accepted that the loss and damage discussion be in the agenda at COP27, the precondition by those in the North was that, having ascertained that there has been loss, having ascertained that others have suffered damage, we stop short of including any reference to liability. This is counterintuitive because the very notion of having suffered damage as a result of another party's actions gives rise to liability. But as far as the discussions at the COPs are concerned, liability is off the table.